I'm interested in something you mentioned earlier. It's relevant to a lot of people, which is emotionally, what was this journey like? And did you suffer some low periods or anxious periods where you were struggling at the time?
I'm afraid I did, but it was quite a way down the road. But I think the whole thing was clouded a bit by the fact that I had to move house due to flooding, which initially I had to apply my mind and time to. But once that was resolved and I moved back, I then learnt that I had to have a further 6 months chemotherapy, which came as a total shock to me. But I hadn't picked up on it if it had been mentioned before. It was explained to me that it was like a mopping up exercise rather than anything to be alarmed about. So that meant yet another 6 months of the routine of going to the LRI on the cycles as I outlined before, which meant that it was a longer time that before I could return to work, because fairly obviously I think if you're taking chemotherapy and there are side effects, you don't want to be driving for long periods in strange cars. In fact, I think my employers would have poo-pooed it anyway. So that was a further delay. But when I did finish that, almost immediately I thought, well, they've been good to me. It's been a year now. I haven't been back for a year. I must get back. So at the first opportunity, I went to my GP, asked him to sign you up, because you can't go back until you have a note to say that he's willing for it. He did advise a staged return to work. By that I think he meant days and hours. And whilst my direct superior in the organisation was wholly supportive, it was a hard thing to enact given the nature of the work I did. In other words, if you go out, you might send you out to somewhere that you would reasonably expect to be back by 12, but you might get stuck on the M6 or something. You couldn't say finish at 12 because you can't park it up in the fast lane and go home. So that proved hard to put into practice, although it wasn't an unwillingness. And sometimes if I'd done a full day, he would let me go home early, which was kind of him, but B, made me feel a bit that I'm not really back full bore. I'm, needing special privileges, and so, and I did also get tired. I did get tired with driving, and I got up rather early, and some I've touched on before, to make sure that I gave myself a reasonable chance of not being caught short, for want of a better expression. And he picked up on this tiredness, and it went on. I managed this for about 5 or 6 weeks, but he picked up on it, and he said, have the rest of the week off, which was kind of him. And I did, but then I spent a lot of time on my own, because my wife works full time, and there was things that hadn't been remedied in the house which were going wrong, and I think I made more of them than they were. And because, long story short, with not having any focus of work and the rapport and the crack that goes with that with colleagues, being on my own and thinking, well, this is it has changed my life, and I became rather lazy and slothful, and it seemed that even very small routine domestic chores seemed very onerous to me, and it wasn't just skiving, and that progressed then to the weekends. I didn't want to do anything at the weekends or go out shopping, and avoided social contact, really.
Was it a sense that your fatigue was higher, or was it more a loss of interest in motivation?
I think the latter, the motivation. I was tired, but I mean, you can do most things when you're tired, you just do them for less time. But I just couldn't be bothered to do the most.
Yeah. Now,
basic things.
It sounds like it was quite closely related to the change in your role, given the work had been interrupted and you were working quite hard before this. In other words, did the inability to go to work at that stage, did that affect your self-confidence and your self-esteem?
Most certainly. It's just too much of a coincidence.
Yeah. And were you able to replace that activity with anything else?
Not really, because unfortunately, because we are talking fairly recent times, it is the time of year it is, and the weather has been rather appalling. I'm a passionate angler and a secretary of a club, and I've been so for 40 odd years, but one morning I got up and the Stober was playing up, and I thought, I can't go like this, and I didn't go. But then I didn't go again for about 6 months. Somehow I felt that because obviously when you go in the country fishing, you're more remote than almost any other. But I've since learned that again, with a bit of prep and a bit of common sense, to give up was wrong. But having given up, and I found it very hard to start again. And it was the same with going in I like a pint, going the village local, but I found that I couldn't be bothered to get changed to go, because most people have a wash and brush up if they're going to go out socialising. Didn't do that, so therefore didn't go. And once you'd done it 1 week, it became a habit as well.